Tristan Dix.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our sunset safari from, well, this side of the world in sunny South Africa. It is a beautiful afternoon. We're having almost unlike winter temperatures. It seems as though we're going into our spring already, which is quite early. Now, my name is Tristan, and on camera today I've got Senzo, and we are going to try and see if we can't follow up on Shadow this afternoon. We're going to try and see if we can pick up some tracks where Tara left off this morning. And so it is a live interactive experience, which means that you can ask questions and you can get involved with our tracking experience as we go along. Hashtag Safari Live on Twitter or on the YouTube chat. Right. Onward and forward we go. It's been quite warm, so I would imagine if Shadow, who's still nursing that injury from yesterday and probably still not 100% just yet, I doubt she would have moved too much during the day today. Given that it is quite warm, it would be a little hot for a leopard to be moving around with too much vigor, particularly one that's in a little bit of discomfort. So I'm hoping that she's somewhere still in this area. I'm going to just check down Zoe's road, see if there isn't any sign of tracks coming out there. If there's nothing, then I'll go down where we had her yesterday and pretty much where Tara had tracks this morning and see if there isn't any sign there. Failing all of that, if we can't find any signs of Shadow whatsoever this afternoon, we will then head back towards Tinyo, the Birmingham boy, who was sleeping at Buffelshoek Dam a little bit later, and see if we can't get him to vocalize this afternoon. So that is the plan. Hopefully it will be a successful one. What do you reckon, Senzo? We're going to win it? We're in it to win it?
Yeah.
Yeah? If Senzo's on board, generally things happen. Old eagle-eyed Senzo tends to spot everything with absolute ease, so hopefully he'll be able to spot us a spotted cat as well. And I'm checking here was because they've been hanging around this area for quite some time, and they've been moving up and down around this little general junction, the cub and Shadow. So hopefully the cub is also around if we do pick up on Shadow. And so while we kind of look and search and see if we can't find anything, let's go back to James and see where he's going to after his buffalo.
No, not buffaloes. We won't be looking for any buffaloes here. We did show you some buffalo, I think, a little bit earlier, didn't we? In amongst that lot, we did. So we found them. We are still looking for the lions. Now, around here, what one does is one comes to a waterhole like this, and often one finds lions lurking, waiting for the herds to come along. But the herds are now, at least the lions are now so satiated with enormous amounts of meat that the chances of finding them actually on the hunt reduce substantially as the migration season progresses. John, you're wondering what it feels like to be surrounded by gnu's. It feels fairly I don't know. Fergus, how do you feel about being surrounded by gnu's?
I feel like I'm one of them now.
You feel like you're one of them. Okay, so it makes you feel like a gnu.
It makes me feel fairly monotone in my
Yes. Yes, one talks like this, being among the gnu's. Hurry, John, I'll try and give you better answer. John, I think it's just great fun, because of course it's not an experience that lasts for very long. It goes away after a few weeks, and then, well, all is quiet again. And I've said this before, but I think it's probably very much like the holiday season where my mum and dad live in a little sleepy coastal town, and in fact where Fergus's mother spends quite a lot of time as well. In fact, she's there right now, isn't she, Fergus?
Not her personally.
Not her personally, okay. Well, that's not relevant. What is relevant, of course, is that it's a sleepy little town until the 6 weeks of the December holidays, when it looks a little bit like this. The noise is quite similar. It's basically what a South African teenager sounds like when they're going off wassailing of an evening or knocking about on the beach, lecking. And so I think it's probably quite like being in a seaside town of a December holiday, John. Let's continue. Have we still got signal, Rebecca? Are you still with us? can see Agama. We should be fine. Ah, she's still with us. Alrighty, we're going to pop up onto the top of the hill here. I drove this whole road yesterday. I've driven it 3 or 4 times in the last 3 times I've been out, actually. And I'm told that the sausage tree pride hangs out on this road, and that I'm almost guaranteed to find them if I drive along it. Well, I have yet to find that to be vaguely true. So what you're looking for in an area like this is a tree that is conspicuously sort of avoided by the herds, if you like, because the lions will be flat on the ground, quite probably. And that's especially the case if it's been a sunny day, and it's been a very sunny, hot, warmish day. So that's what I'm looking for. But as I scan across the plains here, all I can see is a whole lot of wildebeest spread very evenly, and I don't think that there are any lions in this immediate vicinity. But I'm hopefully going to be wrong. You know, it's still very entertaining just to have this great number of animals around us, especially that beautiful sort of shot there of the Olulolo escarpment, stretching some 1,000 feet into the East African sky. Devi, you want to know if gnu's talk to each other constantly. Devi, I think that talking to each other would be a very strong way to describe their communication. Do they grunt at each other? Yes, they certainly do, constantly. Often it's the males setting up their little territories, which can last for as little time as 20 minutes. Sorry about that. But I don't think that they are saying a great deal other than sort of communicating their presence. I think, like most animals out here, their communication, or the communication that is worth anything, or that is useful to them, is largely unsaid. In other words, it's not spoken. It's sort of gleaned from body language and that sort of thing. Let me just go on top of this hill, and then we're going to look down into the valley and see if we can't discover a tree that is bereft, or is bereft the correct word? No, it is not. That is devoid of any wildebeest activity. There's a sausage tree just up ahead, after which the sausage tree pride gets its name. I've obviously yet to see a sausage tree lion around it. There's a sort of, what should we say, swampy type spot way down in the valley there, and I wonder if we shouldn't just have a squiz around there. What we're looking for is slightly more tawny than tawny. Alrighty, we're going to sit here and just scan the area for a little while. While we do that, Tristan, I believe, has not found shadow.
No, we haven't found shadow yet, James. We had a dwarf mongoose, but it ran away, unfortunately. It was just squeaking off to the left in the grass, and it then bounded away and has now disappeared. So we checked Zoe's, no sign of tracks coming out there, which is, I suppose, good news in a way, because it means that hopefully shadow is still inside this block. The problem with this block is that it is rather long grass, and I was just saying to Senzo now that tracking shadow at the moment is probably not the wisest idea. A cat that has got a slight injury is not going to be the happiest of cats, and we know that shadow can be a little on the feisty side when she's fit and healthy, let alone when she's carrying an injury. So I don't think walking around here too much is too wise. So what we're going to try and hope for is that she's just lying in some shade somewhere close enough that we can actually see from the road, or if I can just find some tracks on a pathway that we can try and track her with the car rather than actually using our feet, because like I say, it's not the cleverest of things to be tracking an injured leopard. But I certainly think we're going to have a fairly quiet start to the afternoon out on these areas. I think if we head more towards Mulawati and the watering points, we'll get a bit more activity there. It's still quite warm now, so I don't think too many of these animals are going to be wanting to spend too much time right out in the open sunshine and be absolutely blitzed by the sun. It's, like I say, quite warm, and so it would be better for them to be in shade and be near water. So we certainly will use some of the water holes a little bit later in the day. Marla, you're wondering what injury does Shadow have? Well, yesterday afternoon we came across Shadow, and unfortunately she seems to have an injury to her right front leg. Now, I could not see any sign of any cuts or wounds or anything like that, but she was not putting any weight on her front right leg at all. She was walking, hobbling, trying to kind of bounce her way along, and she sat most of the afternoon on a termite mound. She didn't move too much from there. It was only when some wild dogs arrived a little bit later in the afternoon, or that she spotted. We didn't actually see the dogs. I could just see where the cars that had the dogs were. She spotted them, and then she started to move a little bit. So prior to that, we didn't see too much movement from her, but she did definitely have a very bad limp as she was walking around. Now, an animal that Shadow used to hunt is these guys in front. I know that her sister and her have both brought down rather large kudu in their time, so that is a big adult female that's crossing the road. It is pretty impressive that a smallish leopard, because remember, Shadow and Tundi are both smaller leopards, they can bring down such a large animal. It baffles my mind that both of them have managed to bring down fully grown female kudu. The male kudu is a little bit of a stretch beyond both of them, and I haven't seen them going after either of those, but definitely these adult females. Now, if they have any babies, that typically would have been a target for Shadow, but in the condition that she's in at the moment, I don't think she's going to be targeting massive antelope to struggle with. I'm sure she's going to be trying to get smaller things like birds and mongoose and those kind of things to try and sustain herself over the next few days. Now, the rest of the herd of kudu are slowly but surely coming across. You can see they're pretty watchful when they cross roads, and the reason why they are pretty watchful when they cross roads is because it's a little bit more open, and so there's a likelihood that they could potentially be spotted, and so they check around, they listen, they look, just to make sure there isn't anything lying in wait. Also with the road, you'll find, I've seen cats doing this many times, both lion and leopard, there's a little verge that's on the edge of the road, and so the cats will lie right up against that verge, and the grass camouflages them, and only when this animal comes right onto the road is that cat actually spotted, and so you'll find that they'll often look side to side as they cross roads. Now, I believe Alice is telling me that James Henry was talking about wildebeest and their talking and their alarm calls, and, well, the kudu is probably a species that doesn't actually make too many noises outside of when it's seen a predator. You'll find with these guys, they're not like the wildebeest or buffalo that constantly grunt and make sounds. These guys tend to be very quiet and to try and camouflage as much as possible and not draw too much attention to themselves. But when there is something that is around, you will find that they make the most amazing sound. You wouldn't expect it to come from a delicate, very or quaint antelope like this. You'd think that it would come from a massive dog, because they make a barking sound. They do not make a snort like the impalas or a sort of grunt like the buffalo and wildebeest. They bark just like a dog, and the kudu's bark, given how big it is, can actually make a massive, massive sound. It's really quite incredible to listen to them bark, and they are one of the more reliable animals for us in terms of their alarm calls. John, you're wondering about the hump on the back. The hump on the back is just muscles. So that's a huge muscular structure that is around that shoulder blade area, and that is to help this animal be able to jump. One of the ways that kudus will evade predators is often to jump straight over them, and I have seen kudus jumping over prides of lions before. It is quite something to see, and they reckon that these kudu can clear 2 meters from a standing start. So that's over 7 feet without really having to do any running to get some speed to get up that high. So they really are agile, and that huge amount of muscle helps just to be able to get them up and to lift such a massive, heavy body over any predator that potentially comes after them. Now, our kudu are slowly but surely disappearing. And it's interesting because they're coming from right where Tara said she had tracks for shadows. According to Tara and where she said to me that she had the tracks, it was just in front here. You see there's that big termite mound over there. She said to me that they crossed here somewhere from this last night. So I'm going to quickly just check around and see if I can't see any sign of these tracks. But those kudus look so relaxed that I doubt they've seen any sign of a predator at all in the last little bit. Let's see if I can't find where Tara had these tracks. Now, Alice, I would love to say I knew what you said, but there was about 3 people talking on the radio at the same time as you, and all I got was that I must link to James. So wherever I'm going to James and whatever he's up to, I'm sure it will be entertaining. So let's go across to him.
Well, we're looking at a rock, so yes, fascinating, entertaining stuff, the kind of thing that dreams and documentaries and, Academy Awards for Best Documentary Film, etc. are made. Rocks. That's obviously untrue, everybody, but we are looking at rocks. I thought maybe as that area is devoid of wildebeest, there might be a lion around it. But it would seem that that is not the case. So let us continue. Beautiful, beautiful hillside this. I intend to go and spend some time walking on it at some stage, because on top of it, of course, is outside of the reserve. So that I can walk the ancient pathways and look down over this amazing landscape where I never really expected to find myself at home, but now here I am. Here we all are, together, learning and enjoying our first migration season. We will of course be here permanently, so it's not like after the migration we will disappear. Now here is a good patch. Here is a good patch of land with no lion or with no wildebeest in it. So perhaps there are some lions in it. Now many of you are asking about the wildebeest that we saw during our Facebook Live last night. Let me just tell you what we saw last night. We saw a wildebeest stuck in the mud and it was being attacked, and a lion was attempting to kill it in the mud. It's a fascinating sighting, very disturbing to watch, I think we can say, quite safely. And we went past there recently and the wildebeest died, I think drowned in the mud. Couldn't get out again. Lion just managed to get out, and we didn't actually see any lions around there today. There was another carcass on the side of the waterhole that had been picked clean. There were a lot of vultures around that carcass, but other than that there really were not there wasn't a huge amount of predator activity, but lots and lots of wildebeest and zebra going back down to that waterhole. And so what we thought we'd do is head down there towards the end of the day and see if they don't emerge again. We looked around for the lions there but didn't spot them. Let's look up at those other rocks there, next to the first rocks that we looked at. I don't see any lions. Alrighty, let's carry on from here. This is the first time I've done this kind of very slow, ponderous move through here, I must say. And I'm hoping it'll bear greater results than driving through and trying to cover as much ground as possible. Driving under a Balanites tree, Balanites aegyptia, and we've had very little time to actually discover the trees of this area on account of the fact that we've been spending so much time trying to sort of get to know the area and follow the lions and find out who the big prides are and where the cheetah are, etc. Scott, by the way, is looking for the 5 cheetah brothers, and when he's got a bit of signal, it seems that he has managed to find a lot of signal and much greener grass.
Hello everyone, great to have you with us. We weren't quite ready, but VM did a good job on camera to slip down from those clouds and onto me. My name is Scott. It's a great pleasure to have you on board. And as you're aware, we've been searching for signal. We're in an area I've never been before, and it is very green. Take a look around. It's absolutely beautiful. By far the greenest area I've seen. So they've obviously got some good rain here, and that good rain has brought with it many, many wildebeest. There are hundreds dotted through this little valley. And they are not the only animals here. There's a coalition of 5 cheetah, which is not too far behind us. Sadly, not in a signal area. They are looking very, very full-bellied, though. They managed to kill a wildebeest this morning. I'm guessing their usual deal, about a 5-6-month-old wildebeest, but I cannot be certain. We did see them with full bellies, and I'm guessing they're not going to be active until a little bit closer towards darkness. And then our plan is to spend the night with them and tomorrow night with them, and then leave them on Wednesday evening. So hopefully between sometime now and Wednesday evening, they will get hungry again and show us what they know how to do best. We have and we are thinking they're some lions. You can just see a few kind of pale dots within those bushes, and I'm guessing that that is the belly of a lion. So the lion are there, the cheetah are probably a kilometer to the south. I think we can actually show them in the bushes just to the left of that euphorbia, VM. There's that thicket, and that's where the cheetah are lying, somewhere in there. Very good. We're going to continue towards those lions and try and get you a closer view of them. And while we do that, we're going to send you back to Tristan, who's found some tracks of shadow.
Now, we have managed to find the tracks for shadow. I'm not sure if these are from this morning or from this afternoon, given that Tara did drive around here quite a bit and they are on top of the vehicle tracks. I would imagine that they must be from during the day today. But they are a very interesting set of tracks because they can show a lot of what's going on with shadow at the moment and in terms of how she's walking. Generally, when you find a set of tracks, you'll find 2 front feet and 2 back feet as they walk along the road, and they'll go as up and down as they go. Now, this one is very interesting, is that here in the middle, you've got a very wide track that is perfectly positioned, and you can see that it's the front paw because of how wide and circular it is. The back legs tend to have a much more elongated track, which is like the one here that is closest to me. So this is a back foot, front foot, and then back foot, but no other front foot stepping down. So she's basically stepping with her front foot here, back feet, and then hopping her way to the next position. So instead of seeing 2 front feet and 2 back feet, we're seeing 1 front foot, 2 back foot, and then another back foot, and then it goes front foot, back foot, back foot, front foot. So it's a very different track to what you would normally see from a leopard, and one that shows you that she's still, whether that's from today or last night, is still limping quite badly and is not using that front right at all. So we'll try and follow these tracks now and just see where they go. From what I can gather, Aubrey came down the road. He said he didn't find any further tracks, which means that she must have gone inside this block here. Now there's a number of termite mounds that would be the perfect place for Shadow to be able to spend some time. I would imagine that she's using either a tree or a mound to get a bit of shade and to just rest in that shade and wait for it to get a bit cooler before she moves around again. The last track I have is in front here, and it goes straight in this direction into the bush towards that mound that is in front of me over there. So I'm going to try and just check some of these mounds. I don't know, like I say, if these are the same tracks that Tara had. They seem to be on top of the vehicle tracks from this morning, and I know Tara drove here quite a bit. That it would mean, hopefully, we should be able to find her. Let's see, I just want to quickly check this mound itself, because this mound is the closest shady point. Now while I check the mound and check if I can't find any sign of shadow here around the mound, let's go across to Scott, who is with something that I'm very jealous that he's getting to see, because, well, we just really don't see many of them here at Djuma.
Well, there it is, a secretary bird, and like Tristan says, sadly, not too many of them around Djuma. We are very lucky here as they are plentiful. This is the perfect habitat for them. Tristan did say he was jealous, and I'm also jealous of him being able to be off the vehicle, following up on tracks. Tracking leopard is certainly one of the most awesome things that you can do, or at least I certainly think so. So looking actually forward to going back to Djuma and spending some time doing that, as I'm sure Tristan is looking forward to spending time up here with the secretary birds, the open, wide plains, and all of the wildebeest. Beautiful. So we bumped into this aerial predator. Well, it's a ground predator, but I guess it is a raptor. On the way to the lion, they're just ahead of us, so stick with us for a minute or two, and let's see how many lion are lazing around in this bush. I'm guessing like most lion and most predators in the Masai Mara at the moment, they are going to be full-bellied. There's just so much food around. So that's almost a given, but what we cannot confirm is when their next hunting activity will be. So it's always exciting not knowing that. We're going to try and actually work out where they are and rush you off to James in the meantime.
Hello everybody, there used to be an Oribi there. You still see it there? Sorry, I've got so much dust on my monitor I can't see. That is an Oribi. It is an Oribi female. It's my first Oribi that I've ever shown you. You may have seen one or two while you've been here. It's an unusual little antelope, and it likes to live in the long grass, as you can see. It doesn't like to live in the long grass unless you put a camera on it, at which point it immediately dives into the long grass. We've had absolutely no luck with the lions at the moment, and so we are going to continue down away from the Olololo escarpment, continuing our strategy of looking for supposedly animal-free trees. Let's see if we can't get one more look at this Oribi. I think it's gone, hasn't it? You see it there. It was pretty relaxed. Now it's about, there it is. I'll just get my book out. It's about twice the size of a Steenbok. A bit taller, longer necked. Same sort of venation in the ears, which is quite fun. I'm not sure why it's fun, but it is quite interesting. Right, let me look it up in this book. Oh, for Oribi. I do, of course, have an app that I could be using, but I like to go old school when it comes to books. Steenbok. No, we don't want Steenbok. We want Oribi. Oh, don't worry everybody, I will get there eventually. It's one of the dwarf antelope. There we are. Now, the most obvious feature, of course, which you can't see right now, is a very obvious gland that is just underneath the ear. There we go. Very nice. Kind of longish nose, and they weigh up to about 21 kilograms for a male, so about twice the size as a Steenbok. Pretty, hey? And I think you probably find you don't find them in a place like the Sabi sand very much, because the grass isn't this long, and that's what they depend on. Yeah, largely a grazer, and it likes to live in very large, long grass. Rebecca's just said it looks like he's wearing earphones, where those black spots are. Yes, he does look a little bit like he's wearing earphones, doesn't he? I wonder what he's listening to. Some kind of youngster's Oribi wrap, I suppose. Beautiful. Alrighty, Tristan's got something that really struggles to fly.
Okay, well, we've managed to catch up to the secretary bird, and that lapwing that you saw flying off there was busy doing a great job bomb diving it. So possibly the secretary bird was heading close to their nests and they were trying to create a bit of a diversion. They're very smart birds, the lapwings, because they know how to draw the predators away from their nests. But it appears that just as you came, things seemed to quieten down. Now, I didn't tell you too much about the secretary birds when you last saw them. They are incredible snake hunters, although I've never seen them hunting a snake. One of the only things that I've actually heard of them killing or something of a substantial size was a dwarf mongoose. Other than that, I think it's quite small creatures, small rodents, insects. I think they take whatever they can get, but wouldn't it be incredible to see them hunting snakes? They use their feet to hammer down, their long legs and then their feet to hammer down on the snake's head, that way dispatching it. Hello Snazzy, you would like to know if these birds are common out in the bush, and yes, here in the Masai Mara they are fairly common. You see them quite regularly, but down in Djuma far less often. So isn't it lucky that you're on a safari in both places simultaneously, bouncing between the two, enjoying what both have, or both advantages each place has to offer. Leopard is another one of the advantages of the Sabi sands, and hopefully Tristan will be able to track down Shadow shortly for you. And wouldn't it be wonderful if we just continue to set up camps in more parts of Africa and the world, and then you could be on safari all around the world, all at one time. Paula, I certainly agree with you. The secretary bird does know how to strut its stuff. It looks like it's a schmodel on a catwalk, doing its thing. Its fancy head feathers also give it a bit of extra flamboyance. Come on, find something to snack on. Well, whatever it does find, it's not going to have much place to hide in the short grass. Oh, well, the lapwings are back. Let's see. Maybe it's getting close to their nest. Hello, Sanak. You'd like to know if this bird is the heaviest bird of prey, and I highly, highly doubt it. Even though it spends time on the ground, it's quite a slight bird. It's not very big, its body, and I'm almost certain the martial eagle and the crowned eagles, both which occur in Africa, are both bigger than these. And you also get some other predatory birds like the albatross, which is very, very big and heavy. So I'm actually not sure how much the secretary bird weighs. Let me have a quick look in my book. Like James, I'm a little bit old school. That's probably mainly because I just don't know how to work the apps, or my phone or computer is permanently broken, which makes things a little bit tricky. A book is a little bit more reliable for somebody like me. So, just got to remember how the alphabet works, and then I'll be able to start narrowing things down here. Okay. So it doesn't have its weight. So that's no good. But I'm sure if any of you guys would like to do some research on that, you'd find out fairly quickly. James, you'd like to know if there's any noticeable size difference between the male and female secretary bird. There will be a slight difference. Usually the female birds are slightly bigger than the men. For mating purposes, it wouldn't make too much sense if the men were bigger than the ladies. It would be a little bit top-heavy. And so that's a general rule for birds. But yes, it would be very, very difficult to notice a difference just with your eye. And again, I'm not entirely certain of how much of a difference there will be. It'll probably be quite slight and difficult for us to detect. And as humans, a general rule for me is that the easiest way to detect or distinguish between male and female is through plumage, not size. It's usually the plumage that allows us to distinguish, but in the case of the secretary bird, they are both identical. I wonder if it's working this area a little bit more effectively, kind of walking lines, now that it knows that these lapwings have given it a hard time. It must know that there must be some treasure waiting for it in this short grass. The eggs will be incredibly cryptically camouflaged, as well as the chicks. Once the eggs hatch open, the chicks are born ready to dissolve into their surroundings, and their general default move is to just lie down flat in the grass and keep dead still. And if they do this, even the secretary bird could well walk past them. It's if they try and move away, that it'll detect them, and then they've got no chance. It'd be really interesting to know how many kilometers these birds work every day. I mean, already it's walked quite some distance, and it would be very, very good to know. And who knows, when we've got more time in the Mara, maybe we will spend a day with the secretary bird. Okay, we are going to send you back to Tristan for an update on how his tracking is coming along.
Now, we've come across tracks for the little cub now as well, which is just walking on the edge of the road. You can see them just there, going along. Now, they're much, much, much smaller than the adult that is Shadow. So you can see there, those are tiny little footprints. And that's also from last night by the looks of things. It's not from during the day today. The wind has disturbed it a little bit, but that is most certainly the little cub's tracks from last night. So the cub is still walking around, which is good news, because whenever you see a female leopard who's got cubs that potentially is injured, you always got to wonder, maybe it was possible that she got injured trying to protect the cubs. So if the cub's walking around and Shadow's around, I'm sure the two of them are together here somewhere. Now, Scott was wondering how our tracking was going, and well, I remember fondly doing some tracking with Scott myself, and I remember how much he loves tracking, and he's a very good tracker as well. So it's going to be good at some point to get back together with Scott somewhere and do some tracking wherever that may be. It's going to be quite fun to do that. Alas, the termite mounds we checked didn't have any sign of Shadow, Scotty, so we're going to try and see if we can't find any other side. I just want to close off Triple M and make sure she hasn't gone that way before we really commit into this. And like I was saying earlier, the problem with these tracks is that unfortunately we can't really follow up on foot. Like I say, with an injured leopard, and particularly if she's a mom and she's got cub, you know, she's going to feel as though she's a lot more vulnerable than normal, and so I don't really want to stress her out any more than we have to. If we bump into her, we bump into her, but I'm certainly not going to go walk around and then make her get very upset with me, because it really is no point. We're just going to end up stressing her out and, well, stressing me out too. So I believe Scotty says he also wants to track soon, so we'll have to do some tracking together at some point. Like I say, I remember doing a walk with Scott back in the day at Singita, and I don't know if he'll remember this, I'm sure he will, but we did a walk with some of his friends that came up from another reserve in KwaZulu-Natal called Pinda, and we did a walk, and we walked into this big Ellie bull on foot, and we sat there, and Scott was the lead rifle at that stage, and he kind of walked us in, and it was really quite a phenomenal sort of session that we did, and really had a good time. And we had such an epic sort of sighting of this big bull elephant just moving past us without even knowing that we in any way were there. It was really quite special, so it was a good time, and hopefully, like I say, we can repeat that at some stage soon. Nothing coming out of Impala Plains, which is good news, and the tracks that we saw there are actually heading back into Djuma, so it's not like they're heading towards the boundary in any way. So I'm pretty sure if Shadow's here, she is on this side somewhere, but it is a bit of a needle in a haystack. You can imagine if she's curled up in a bit of shade and she's not on one of these mounds, there are millions of trees here. If you look to our left hand side, which is where we're trying to find her, there are a lot of trees, and any one of these trees is providing shade, which means she could be lying under any one of those somewhere in here. So unless you drive right near her and her head pops up, it's going to be very difficult. Francis from Israel, you're wondering if the cub would be able to survive all by itself. Debatable. It's a possibility that it could, but I think it's probably at this stage of the age that it's very unlikely. So given that it's 8 months old, it's not really got the hunting techniques down pat yet. It probably hasn't been taught too much by Shadow just yet. So I don't know. I have heard of leopards surviving that have been left at 9, 10 months old. So it does happen that they can survive, but it's an anomaly more than a sort of certainty. So you'll find a situation with this cub that I reckon if Shadow had to disappear now, that I don't think it would survive. It would be a really tough one. It could, but I don't think it would. The number of predators within this particular section would mean that it would really have to be quite smart about what it's doing and really try and show some sort of initiative. It is possible though, and we can't write off leopards. Leopards are such incredible animals in that they are so resilient to everything that goes on, and they make sure that they find some sort of way to survive, and so it is highly possible, but I just don't think it would happen, to be honest. Now, in terms of Shadow, and I know a lot of you are very worried about Shadow, and I was saying to you that she is walking badly, and it looks very bad, but as I was saying yesterday, that I have seen numerous different leopard and lions that have limped and walked with very bad limps, and they've actually been able to survive from that and been able to find a way through. So it's not in any way a negative thing just yet. We just have to keep positive and hope that it was just something that was like a sprain, and within the next 2-3 days she starts to work it out and starts to walk a little bit better again. Now let's go back all the way to the Masai Mara with Mr. Bond, Mr. Henry, and I hope he's donning his fancy hats. We don't want him to get some sunburn, and well, to reassure him that I'm also of the old school bunch, and I also use the books rather than the apps.
Thank you very much, Tristan, for telling me that you are also of the old school and you use books. If you were using a book, you would probably be able to discover that this is a group of shall we say, interspecial vulture gathering. We've got Rupel's griffins, they're the sort of blotchy ones. And then, if I'm not very much mistaken, the one in the middle is a white-headed vulture, which unsurprisingly doesn't have a white head. No, it's not, it's actually leopard-faced. That's the big leopard-faced vulture. That's the biggest vulture species here. And then there's a white-backed. In fact, two. And then the Rupel's griffin up above with its honey-coloured beak. And if you look at the trunk of that Balanites tree, what you will see is that these ain't the first vultures to be sitting in that tree. And in fact, it seems to be something of an ablution tree. Very nice. Guano. Meaty guano, very smelly. Any guano is pretty smelly, but meaty guano especially so. Alrighty, we have crossed the main road. We are now heading down into the block. And Rebecca is asking the question, do we get any vultures in the Mara that we don't get in South Africa? Yes, Rebecca, the Rupel's griffin vulture is not found in South Africa. It has been seen there from time to time, but it would be very unusual to see it there. It's the most vulturish looking vulture you can find. There it is, sitting on the top of that tree. It's probably going to fly away. It's very nicely framed against the sky there. I might take an illegal photograph. Especially if it deigns to take off. Why don't you fly, vulture? Well, I've got my camera set on you. You want to fly? No? I know you will as soon as I start the engine though, won't you? Yes. Isn't he lovely? Well, I think lovely is quite a strong term, but he's quite attractive-ish. Wouldn't you say? Here we go. Come on. That's it. I know you want to. There's food everywhere. You look hungry. No. Yes. He keeps looking like he's going to go. There we go. Beautiful. Quite fun, really. Naturally, I didn't get the photograph. What a cretin. Alright, let's carry on. Steffi, you want to know what my favourite vulture is? My favourite vulture is the Cape vulture. It is my favourite vulture because it's the first vulture I learned about when I was a small boy. Well, smallish. I never really got to be a very big boy. And as in Natal, it's in the northern parts of, well, where is it? Sort of northeastern parts of South Africa, I suppose. And there we used to go and walk and look over the cliffs onto a Cape vulture colony. And while I had absolutely no interest in the birds whatsoever, the memories of those walks we kept on those walks has always made me very partial to the Cape vulture. Not a very biologically satisfying answer, but if we look around here, you can just see beautiful, beautiful clouds starting to form a storm that I hope will not reach us. Now we're into an area that is devoid of wildebeest, and that either means that that's because there are lions here or because the grass is not very nice to eat. And well, there are a few vultures around, so maybe their lions will keep searching around. Now I believe that Scott this is a problem now, of course, because Fergus is looking a bit jealous, and Scott is enjoying the clouds with a cup of coffee.
Hello everyone, and we have just poured ourselves a delicious cup of coffee. I finished stirring it. I put 2 sugars in, a little bit naughty. I usually only have 1, but I'm feeling a little bit tired. It's taken us about 4.5 hours to get to where we needed to get to these Chitwa today. So it was quite a tiring journey, but now I'm feeling good. I've had a roll with bacon and tomato on it, very tasty, and now a coffee, which should put me right, as has VM. Let me tell you what it's like. Very good. Very, very good. Our milk bottle broke, but thankfully we had an empty water bottle, so we decanted the milk into a water bottle. I'll deal with that a little bit later. We've got a very sophisticated kitchenette back behind VM, but we're not going to take you back there just yet. There's our flask, some gaffer tape, which is a very important tool for us at Safari Live because it helps us to fix everything. Marvelous! We stopped here to show you some Thompson's gazelle, and there's still a few up ahead. I just love the way they permanently wag their tails. You can bank on that happening. Oh, there's a little foal lying down in the grass there, it looks like. Not too small. I'm looking forward to the calving season when there's hundreds of these tiny little babies tucked away on the grass, and you can get great sightings of them because just like the little birds, the lapwings I told you about earlier that sit down in the grass and keep dead still to avoid predators, it's no different with the young Thompson's gazelle. Having a closer look around, it also appears like we've stopped in a bit of a graveyard. There's 2 skulls within about 20 meters of one another here. There's the first one. I'm guessing that's a gnu, quite an old one. And there's the second one there, upside down. It would be very, very interesting to know how many gnus pass away daily here and what is the cause of their death. The rivers, natural causes, sickness, or the lions, the cheetahs, and of course the leopards. Hyenas, interestingly, also can do huge damage. I've heard of hyenas killing 6 or 7 wildebeest in 15 or 20 minutes, so that's something that we haven't been able to witness and share with you yet, but it is something that could well happen. So even the hyenas are getting stuck in on the bounty of the migration. We are kind of killing time here, trying to balance between showing you guys around and not going too far away from these cheetah who, like I said, there's a coalition of 5 male cheetah not far from here. They are full-bellied, so they're probably not going to be up to too much too soon, but we are planning on spending the evening with them so that we can wake up first thing in the morning when they're hopefully ready for their next meal. So we'll continue on. Yes, Lynn, this is a lot of coffee. So I'm going to enjoy this. I'm going to send you guys away. Sorry I didn't offer you a cup. We only have 3 cups on the vehicle. But next time I'll be more prepared. And in the meantime, we will be sending you back to Tristan. Toodles.
Now, we've checked Triple M. Unfortunately, no sign, well, fortunately, I suppose, there's no sign crossing into Arethusa, so it means that Shadow is definitely still on our side. It's just a matter of finding her. I think what we're going to do, though, is we're going to go and check some of the water holes, so we'll check Treehouse, Twin Dams, just see if there's anything else about while it's still quite warm, and then we'll take a little turn past there as it gets a bit cooler in the hope that she's up and moving, or at least has got her head out or on a mound somewhere that we can actually see her, because for now, it's just so... the grass is so long, and us kind of driving around, we haven't seen anything from the roads, and we've driven very slowly and very carefully, and we've got eagle-eyed Sensor, and he's not spotted anything, so it means that we're probably better off just coming back a little bit later when it cools down. So rather go and check some water holes, see if anybody's having a drink. It's that kind of day, so I would imagine that there will be. Now, what is that in the grass over there? There we go. Now, I know James was talking about the size of a Steenbok, and there is one just over there. I wonder if it's going to stay where it is. It's almost perfectly camouflaged. If it wasn't for its ears sticking out, I don't think we would have spotted it. But there we go, male Steenbok. And so these guys are the smallest antelope that we get here in in South Africa, should I say, in this part of the Kruger National Park. There is one that is smaller that does occur in the northern parts of the Kruger National Park, and that is called a Sharps Grysbok, and it is slightly smaller than the Steenbok, not much, but just a little bit. And they don't unfortunately occur down here. They're like more mountainous terrain, and so you see them on the eastern and northern sides of the Kruger Park. And then down in the grassy areas and sandy substrate that we have in the southern and central parts of the Kruger, there are lots of these guys. Now, I would imagine that there should be a female somewhere here, because the female and the male stay together for life. They're monogamous, and so they will join together, and they will be in close proximity to one another, which is very nice, except for when there is a predator around, because it's not uncommon to find predators picking off both individuals in a hunting session. And the reason why is because once one is killed, the other one will actively search out its partner, and that often leads it straight into the pathway of that predator. And I've seen Tundi with an entire Steenbok and Duiker family up in a tree. So there was 3 Steenbok and also 3 Duiker that she once had up in a tree, so she took full advantage of that situation. So she got the parents and the baby, unfortunately. Now, Steenbok for me are one of the more interesting antelope that we have out here. They are very, very tolerant of dry conditions. So in that drought last year, they would have actually thrived. So Izzy, you said is your favorite antelope, and I was saying in the drought they would have thrived last year, and the reason why is because they actually don't require huge amounts of moisture, and the moisture that they do need, they get off the dew from the grass. So overnight, if there's any dew, they'll then just lick it all off the plants and the leaves, and that's how they're actually able to glean moisture from there. So they don't actually actively have to go and find a water hole to drink. They will if water is available, like in areas like this, but you go to the Kalahari Desert and places like that, that's how they survive. So they're very tolerant of low water and also of poor quality food. You'll find that they're able to find nutrients in even the toughest of places, and they'll feed off all kinds of things that allow them to survive. Sinak, you asking how old is this foal? Now, Sinak, this is not a foal, this is a fully grown, massive adult male who's probably now thinking to himself he needs to hit the gym to maybe impress people a little bit more, but he is certainly a territorial male. He is as big as you were going to get as a Steenbok, and also when it comes to antelope species, they tend to lamb, not foal. So it is a male Steenbok, but it is fully grown. It's not a baby in any way, and he is a fully grown adult at this stage. You can also see he's a ruminant, which means he has a 4-chambered stomach, and he regurgitates and chews all of the grass that he picks up through the day and is able to chew it and gain every little bit of nutrients. And as I was saying, they survive in harshest climes, and so being a ruminant helps with all of that. But isn't that camouflage absolutely amazing? They've got the most incredible camouflage, sort of rusty color, and it's where their name comes from. So a steen in Afrikaans refers to a stone, and a bok is obviously a buck, and it refers to the way when there is a predator around, you'll find the predator the Steenbok will sit down and just hunch over slightly, and it looks just like a rock or stone in the grass, and therefore camouflages very well. Now, it will also have big ears to be able to hear things, because as you can see, it's pretty much the height of the grass, which means it can't see what's going on, so it has to hear, much like what the Kudus and the bushbuck and Nyala rely on as well. Right, I think it's time for us to carry on and try and go and see what we can find around Treehouse Dam and see if there isn't anything lurking there. Now, I think we're going to go all the way back to Scotty and see his oversized impala, and I'm always jealous of the impala in East Africa because their horns are absolutely massive in comparison to ours.
They certainly are monsters, these East African impalas, although this individual isn't a good example of that. He hasn't reached his full capacity and doesn't look hugely dissimilar from a South African subspecies. What we wanted to show you here is that there are 3 different species. Impala, which you guys know well, and it's mainly the horns that differ in size, not the body. When Tristan's referring to the impala here being bigger, it's mainly the horns, not the body. Then behind it, directly behind it, is a Grant's gazelle, which looks fairly similar to a Thompson's gazelle. However, we can't really see now because the impala's in the way, but they lack Thompson's gazelles have. So you can see just in the Thompson's gazelle have got a prominent black stripe, whereas now you can see the Grant's gazelle lacks that. And it's also about twice the size of the Tommies. So a good opportunity for you guys to get a gauge, an idea of the different sizes of these animals. And of course we have some wildebeest in the background. Very good. What would be nice to show you, that was a male's Grant's gazelle. The females, just like the Thompson's gazelle, have got much thinner horns than the males, but both male and female have horns, unlike the impala where it's just the men. Oh, here's a male. Let's show you this male Tommy here, just to give you an idea. Much smaller horns and body than the Grant's gazelle we were just looking at. So there we have it. Very good. Just going to creep forward a little bit. Actually, I don't think we need to. We can show you the bush where the cheetah are from here. So we're staying in this general area just to make sure we are ready for them when they get up. Sadly, when we were in that area, the hill behind where those cars are is preventing us from getting signal. And if we just can we show the escarpment, I guess, kind of a little bit more to the left. Home is up on that hill, probably not far away from where VM is pointing the camera now. So the tallest hill you can see in the distance is the Olololo escarpment, and that's where camp is, way up there, and it's also where one of our main receiving masts is. So sadly, when we're in this low-lying area, there's a little ridge in our way. You can see some areas of the Mara are getting rain. Thankfully, we are not, because our vehicles are not quite as waterproof as we would like them to be just yet. But what magnificent views. Pretty good. Ah, well, James is somewhere where you can see those rain showers falling down, and I'm told he's busy trying to hustle his way into some dry areas, so why don't you go and see how he's faring.
We are in a dry area, but I fear me not for long. We are underneath the rain, or very close to the rain clouds. And what I find in this area is that, once the wind is blowing towards the rain cloud, you can almost be sure that the rain cloud is coming over the top of you. So I am very worried right now. It doesn't seem to be an enormous storm yet, but they can develop quite quickly. This roof, about as porous as chicken mesh. So with any luck, it will not rain on us. We have failed to find any form of cat. I'm really astounded. I don't know what's eating these wildebeest. We found a dead wildebeest, clearly not killed by natural causes, probably killed by a lion and then just left there to rot quietly. But where the perpetrators of the violence meted out on that poor wildebeest are, I couldn't tell you. But we will keep searching. We will have fortitude, will we not, Fergus?
Yep.
Yes. Fergus of the Fortitude. That's what they call him from today. Now, I'll just show you where Scott is, actually. Scott is pretty much on the top of the sunny part of that ridge there, enjoying his cup of coffee. I hope he was enjoying it. I'm sure he was. I'm going to have to give Fergus one fairly soon now, especially if it starts to rain on us. They saw 2 wild dogs, but otherwise no, not a huge number of wild dogs around this part of the world. They are seen in the Serengeti from time to time, but very seldom up here, and I suspect that's because, of course, there are no fences at all. Not that wild dogs are very good at adhering to fences, but because of the lack of fencing, what happens is that they come into contact all the time with domestic dogs, and that's going to immediately result in their getting distemper, rabies and various other diseases that will knock them out. So that's why we don't see a great number of any wild dogs here at all. Now I believe that Tristan has managed to find what Rebecca describes as a very happy family. That's quite interesting. Let's go and find out.
Now, we've got a big warthog family that are having such a nice mud wallow. You can see Mom is in there. She's taking it very easy, and the kids are just having to wait around and hope that Mom's done at the spa, then they can go and have playtime. So they kind of rooting around in the banks and looking for a bit of food, and every now and then they come and plonk themselves down next to Mom. But at this stage I think Mom's thoroughly happy to be just cooling off in the nice mud on the edge of Treehouse Dam. So I was saying just now that the water sources are probably going to be good places to check given how warm it is, and there's an example of it right there. You can see that these warthogs have made this waterhole their own, which means that there is probably no likelihood of there being a leopard anywhere around here. I can see under the trees and have checked around, and no shongile or hosana lying in wait, unfortunately, because it would be nice to catch up with either one of those. This is common practice for warthogs. You'll find that they often do this, and particularly in the muddy section. So even though there's nice clean water all around, they're not just doing this only for a cooling off purpose. They're also going to roll in that mud to allow the mud to stick to them, so that they can then exfoliate the skin, get rid of any dry skin cells, as well as get rid of any parasites that could potentially be on them at the moment. So things like ticks that might be on them, it gets encased in that mud, and much like rhinos and varying other animals, they're able to go up against wood and rub out on it, and that will pull off those parasites and get rid of them. So it's a clever system to have. You can see a few fork-tailed drongos also following the piglets, so as they're moving they're disturbing insects, and the drongos will then try and get those insects from the warthogs that are disturbing them. Is it time to leave now? We've got to rub our backside first in the mud. Nothing like a good bum scratch in some muddy water to get one's day started, or one's afternoon started. And after you've had a bum scratch in the mud, it's important then to pose and to just get the good side and make sure that you kick your back leg a little bit some reason. I'm not sure. I don't know what's with the animals this week. They seem to have gone crazy, from our jackal that didn't know what to do with itself and in terms of whether going to the toilet or not, to our warthog that's kicking, our ellie that fell down the bank of the Mulawati. It's been a funny week for animals. They all seem to be doing their own thing this week and having a good time. Maybe it was a big party weekend in the animal world. Anyway, right, well, they're sauntering off and moving in a opposite direction from where we are, so we're going to carry on and head out down towards Twin Dams, see if there isn't any sign of the big pachyderms drinking around there. You can see the sun is still bright in the water and is actually pretty harsh on the eyes. The glare coming off this water is very difficult to actually see. It's almost blinding as it mirrors off that reflection. So we'll try go and check Twin Dams, see if there aren't any of our big pachyderms. I know there were some seen on the dam cam, but if we don't come right at Twin Dams, head up the Mulawati and maybe we'll get lucky with those guys that are still at the dam or somewhere close to it at least. So that's going to be the plan. Also want to check the Mulawati just for any signs of any of our spotty friends. It's about time for Tundi and Tamba and Hosana and Shungile to all come back and show themselves again. It's been a few days now without any of those four, so it would be nice to see one of them showing themselves. So Alice, if you can repeat that, sorry, you broke up a little bit. So Alice from FC would like to know how many dams there are on Djuma. Well, Alice, I suppose there's pans and then there's dams, but in terms of the actual dams, there are 4 of them, which is Gari Dam, Treehouse Dam, Twin Dams and Buffelshoek Dam. So those are the 4 dams of Djuma, and then you've got a few pans like Galago Pan, Hippo Pools Pan, Shabamu Pans, Chela Pans. There's quite a lot of those as well. So I will definitely try see in the summer how many pans we actually do get, but for now in dam wise there's only 4, which means they're all pretty much pushed up against the eastern side, and so that's why we get a higher density of elephants on this side of the reserve, and also even buffalo. When the buffalo are around, they spend a lot more time on the eastern side of Djuma, and it's because of the water availability on this side. It's also the riverbed that flows through and a series of drainage sections. The northwestern side of the reserve is more sort of crests, big marula crests with lots of open clearings, and is not the same in any way, so it supports a different ecosystem up there. It's maybe why the Nkuhumas prefer that northwestern side to the east, although they seem to be quite successful the other night when they were hunting on the eastern side of the Mulawati. Oh, there's a little duiker. I wonder if it's going to stay still. We're doing all the small antelope today, from the Mara to us. So we've got the gazelles, we've had impala, we've got a Steenbok, and now there's a little duiker that's just in the thicket. Very difficult to see it, unfortunately, because it's behind a whole bunch of foliage. So this too is a fully grown individual. It also looks like it is a male, so you can see there's 2 small horns sticking out, so much more grey in colour than what we get with the Steenbok. The Steenbok tends to be that more reddish colour. And their name is also an Afrikaans name, so Steenbok Afrikaans, Duiker's Afrikaans, and Duiker refers to a diver, and that refers to the way that this little animal will try and dive and seek shelter when it comes to hiding from predators. So you'll see them running and then diving into a thicket to try and get away from you. So there we go. It's a nice little one to see, and it's not often that we get both Steenbok and Duiker in the same afternoon, so that's exciting times. And an Oribi of all things up there. Now if we saw an Oribi this side, I think I would do flick flacks off the back of this vehicle, because I'd be that excited. It's not something we get to see very often. They used to occur in Kruger, but not many left, unfortunately. Right, let's go back all the way to the Mara to Mr. Henry and see if he's managed to catch up with his sausage lions yet, or if he's had any sign of them at the moment.
No sausage lions, everybody, but we do have a rainbow. And while you look at it, I just would like to say that should the eventuality of an Oribi actually occur in the Sabi sand, I want you to hold Tristan to his promise to do a flick-flack, was it? I'd like to see Tristan Dix assume the position to do a flick-flack, perhaps on one of the roads there, Gari Main. I'm not sure that Tristan appreciates that he and I, of course, are long past our most athletic. He less so than me, of course, but flick-flacks, I think, possibly a thing of the past. Rainbows, however, you can be any age to enjoy. Let's continue. We've kind of done a bit of a turn. We're heading now. We're basically storm running. There's a storm there, there's a storm there, there's a storm there, and so now we're heading towards the only patch of sun we can see. Oh, look at these mouse birds. Look at that. In this Caparis bush. Speckled mouse birds, I think. Oh, that's very special. We so seldom stop for too many birds here. You know, there aren't the sort of tree-lined drainage lines that there are at Djuma. And so normally it's a little cisticola that flits up out of the bush and then disappears again. But here we have a whole lot of mouse birds. And one day I really hope that our signal will be sufficient that we can drive you from the gate to the reserve up to our camp, because we go through this magnificent forest and you get trogons in there and you get Ross's taracos and you get all sorts of beautiful birds and many olive baboons. And maybe with time we'll be able to do that. Well, you want to know about ground nesting birds and if there are any in the Mara other than lapwings that nest on the ground. Yes, well, we get dickups, of course. We get, not dickups, thick-knees now they're called. What else would nest on the ground? Layered eggs. Ostriches nest on the ground, of course. Not often you find them in trees. So they, of course, nest on the ground. I'm not sure. The Kori bustard I don't think does. I think they nest in trees. What else? We've got francolins, of course. Francolins nest on the ground, don't they? Yes, they do. Francolins nest on the ground. And interestingly, many of the cisticola species nest not quite in the same way that a lapwing does in open ground, but they do nest in almost on the ground underneath bushes, a number of the cisticola species. So yeah, there are quite a few ground nesting birds. And here, I mean, look at all this thick grass. If I was a ground nesting bird, I'd be much happier about putting my eggies around here than I would, say, on quarantine clearings, where they're likely to be discovered because the grass isn't quite as thick as it is here. We're now going through some pure grassland, no savanna anymore. Now, Scott apparently has managed to find himself some sun spots and a little bit of a signal, so let's go to him and find out where on earth his cheetah brothers are.
So, we are perched up on another little hill. Oh, I can feel some raindrops. That's not good. We thought we were clear where we are, but clearly not. James is somewhere out in that direction you were looking at. And I thought I would just explain to you guys a little something about the back of my head here. Some of you must have noticed there seems to be a little bit of a chunk of hair missing there. I do cut my own hair. I use a number 6 on the sides and a number 8 on the top, so I'm not Edward Scissorhanding myself. That would be a serious achievement. And I'd done all of that myself, and the closest person to me to help up with neatening up the bum fluff and all the stuff at the back was one of the Kenyan staff members who helps us around camp, who's got the most bizarre name for a Kenyan. His name is Eurobond. So that's something interesting about him, and he took a little ding out of my hair there. So that's a little explanation as to how that got there. Now, I'm not too sure where to head from here. This area is all fairly similar in terms of short grass and hundreds of gnu's in Thompson's gazelle. And I'm also a little bit cautious of where we are going to have signal. And I do not want to go too far from the 5 male cheetah which are lying in a bush just off to our left, a few hundred meters down in a dip, but sadly that's far enough not to pick up any broadcast signal, so we cannot show you any images of them. For now, they may move out of that area before the end of the safari. I'm hoping they do that. I'm trying to work out now when I should go back there to be ready for that. So I'm thinking in about 40 minutes or so. Only catches that I've left James and Tristan to deal with the last hour of the safari on their own, but I'm sure they'll understand the predicaments. Hello Riti, you would like to know if these cheetahs will fight over ladies, and yes, they certainly will. As with most coalitions, or both cheetah and lion, there will be one male that is dominant out of the 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6 of them for both species. So to what degree they will fight, I'm not too sure. I've never seen cheetah fighting over a lady before. I've actually also never seen males fighting over a lady before too aggressively. Sometimes they share though. If there's 2 ladies in season, at least for lion, they can each have one. They also fight over meals, Riti. We've seen that quite recently. The first few meals they shared together in our presence, there was no squabbling. But the last 2, there was a lot of pawing and chirping and squabbling with one another. So maybe they're just going through a bit of a rough patch. And it is possible that this coalition could split up. Some of the males may get fed up of whoever's dominant, and they may branch off and start their own coalition. So that could happen. Let's hope it doesn't. I love the fact that we've got 5 males that we can follow around. It's a serious privilege, and they have certainly been providing us with some incredible action over the few weeks.
Crash Cut Live. Hello everybody. Luckily I wasn't dropping any nasty words as we drove along. You may have just heard me saying to Fergus, well, at least we've seen some beautiful countryside today. That we have. We haven't managed to find any lions and do any action broadcasts to Facebook, but we'll hopefully do that a bit later. Isn't the light spectacular at the moment? Just before it disappears behind the 58th storm of the day. Yeah. It's not pretty, is it, Fergus? Well, not if you happen to be underneath it. If you were sitting and watching it roll in from the migration control, well, then you'd probably think it was very attractive, as you thought about what snifter it was you were going to have from the red chair. We all know what snifter you'd have, don't we, Fergus? Rooibos tea. Obviously. Righty. Bit of thunder now that I can hear. Very intimidating. Now what's interesting about this road that we're on here is that it's actually not really a road. It's much more a wildebeest path that has been made into a road. And many of the tracks that we drive on around here are migration routes to and from the river. It's not a lion, it's a toby, yes. And so we're heading down towards the Mara River now, and then we'll go across to where I saw those cars parked. Rebecca, what did you say about topi and lion? That they're the same? Yes, they are quite the same but different. They're all animals, yes indeed. They are all animals, Rebecca, correct. Everything from a sponge up to an elephant. All animals, and they're just the same. What, him? Yes, she did. Rather, George Orwell on us. Yes, Rebecca Orwell. It was very sophisticated of you, Fergus. Steffi, you want to know how the thunderstorms are here compared with those at Djuma. I would say more frequent and much more nasty. The ones that we get at Djuma, well, they'll be starting, no, not yet. By the middle of next month, you'll start to see them, like the politicians of Africa, as I always say, or politicians anywhere in the world, making promises on the Drakensberg mountain and then delivering nothing. And they will only come in around November. Here, when you see clouds, the storms are very isolated, but they will normally dump something. And in fact, I would say consistently for the last 3 weeks, every afternoon, if you've been in various parts of the Mara, you could easily have had yourself a shower. And then in some parts it just doesn't rain. And I've been today through some very dry and dusty parts that don't look like they've received rain for weeks. But this area certainly has. You can see flushings of green even on the areas that have been heavily grazed. The reason I'm not driving any more quickly towards the lions is because this road is, well, not very well. Now, Tristan, of course, is sitting in, I think, one of the world's best winter climates, that is the Lowveld. He hasn't seen rain for a while.
Now, unfortunately, Twin Dams was a bust for us. There was nothing going on, not even a monitor lizard. So, unfortunately for us, we just bypassed there and carried on, checked the Mulawati, see if there's any sign of any tracks coming north, but nothing there. So now we're going up Chitwa line and we're going to try to see if we can't find Tinyo from this morning and follow up on him. And I believe James was referring to Djuma having the best climate in our winter. Well, James, I can tell you now this winter has felt more like spring, or autumn should we say. It's not been that cold at all. We've said we've had a few cold mornings, but otherwise it's been really quite pleasant. Now apparently Scott Dyson has chased off gremlins and has found himself a rather interesting creature to show all of you.
So, some smaller predators of the African wilderness, black-backed jackal. And this is a happy couple, husband and wife, hard to tell who's who. Hello, you are posing perfectly for us. And who knows, maybe they have a den site nearby. They den in small burrows, and they've got the most cute little pups. Oh, what's that on the termite mound? Oh, they're banded mongooses. I thought they were the pups coming out, but equally impressive creatures. I love the way they stand on their back legs to get a vantage point. Do not be fooled though, they are not meerkats. Sadly, we do not get meerkats here. You also get banded mongooses down in South Africa on Djuma, but not nearly as common as here. They thrive in these open grasslands, which actually boggles me, because aerial predators, or I mean most predators, can just catch them, you would think, relatively easily with very little cover to hide in. Yet obviously with large family groups with lots of eyes just like that one, peering around, making sure there are no attackers on the way, they tend to watch one another's backs. Very good. Well, I'm happy to hear James has managed, I think, to avoid the rain and also find you an elephant.
We have found an enormous elephant. He's walking along the path, and I'm just going to get out of the way for him. I think he'd probably have just gone straight past us, but let's not tempt fate, as it were. Let us give Fergus a decent angle. There we go. Isn't he lovely? He's massive. Well, he's an elephant, of course he's massive. Now, I'm just going to be a little bit cautious here, of course, because I don't know the elephants of the Mara very well. So we'll be nice and quiet. just let him walk gently on past. He's old. He's got a little Askari friend who's learning the ropes with him. And look, oh, the friend's had a really tough time. Look at the edge of his trunk. It's been caught probably in some kind of a snare, I'd imagine. But he's got out of it, and it's got almost 3 fingers on it now. That's the best elephant sighting I've had in the Mara yet. It's the most Sabi Sands-esque one that I've had. Wasn't that lovely? Huge big bull with his little friend who he's teaching. Do you think that's what people thought when they saw me teaching my guitar pupils, Fergus?
Big elephant bull.
Yeah.
Indeed.
I think they must have thought I was a big elephant bull as well.
Used to mangle their fingers if they didn't.
Yes, exactly. Well, it does go a little stir crazy in the wind, I'm afraid. Whoa. I think I just parked on a termite mound. Anyway, we're off it. Let's keep going. Lions, lions, lions. And it was very special. Sinak, you say that was a big elephant. How old was it? I would have said he's probably around 45, 50 years old. He looked pretty old to me. And we tell that just by the condition of his ears and his skin and the weathered look on his face. No, the latter is rubbish because they look weathered from the day they're born. And Sinak, I would have said 40, 45, maybe 50 years old. And that situation there you read about a lot. A big bull and a youngster, and one of them teaching the ropes to the other. And I've so seldom seen it in South Africa. That's the first kind of time I've really thought, oh, well, that's exactly what's going on there. Let's go and find out what Tristan thinks about bulls and Askaris.